Stranger Things. A pretty popular show and a good one at that. However, rest assured, this is not a recap of that show. It's actually a Chinese movie called Revenge Girl, and it has a very similar concept. Oh, and before moving forward, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out all the unblurred videos on Patreon, and let's go. In the distant future, AI has become a part of human lifestyle and cities look like some cyberpunk city. Somewhere in a research lab, a researcher, Lon, is trying to run away with her daughter, Cindy, and her friend, Faye. They are getting chased by the guards. While running, Faye loses his origami crane and goes to find it. The guards catch up to them, however. Yeah, some sick power he has. He faints after using his powers. Lon somehow manages to open the door, but it closes automatically and Faye gets left behind. Chang, who's the director of the facility, sees the ruckus and asks his men to capture them immediately. In the woods, while chasing them, guards manage to shoot Lon's leg. This triggers something in Cindy and she bursts her powers. Lon asks her to run away quickly and go to her granny's house. She then gets ready to face Chung. He's a little surprised. They are developing first-gen chips which enhance human abilities. However, the power he just saw surpasses the first-gen chip. He realizes that Lon has invented the second-gen chip and asks her to hand it over. Lon activates the bomb and sacrifices herself. Even though the explosion was pretty big, Chung manages to survive the blast. So, 10 years have passed since that incident and Cindy has grown up. She doesn't remember anything about the past and has also become crippled. Might be because of her powers back then. However, she is trying to find some clues about her mother's death. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door and she quickly hides all the clues and papers in her drawer. It's her cousin, Shi. Later, her grandma and her brother also return home. They are living in a secluded city which is on the verge of extinction. That typical dystopian rundown cities. Even though they are living a life hiding from Chang and his men, they are living a happy life. Meanwhile, we see that Chang is angry with his researchers. It's been 10 years and yet they haven't managed to develop the second-gen chip. A mysterious man then comes with some people, which he offers him as experimental subjects. The man turns out to be Faye. Chang is getting annoyed because of the constant failure, and he instructs Faye to find Lon's daughter as soon as possible. Later, while taking the stroll through the dystopian city, Cindy and she run into a suspicious man. He's running from Faye's underlings. Cindy quickly asks she to run away as they can't afford to get caught. Chasers see them running and follow them. They somehow manage to corner Cindy and she. One of them even tries to take advantage of her. However, the man from before comes and... Oof, that hit hard. He scares them off and asks Cindy to take him to some clinic as he's wounded. They take him to her granny's house and he suddenly falls unconscious. Her grandma then takes care of his wounds and he comes to his senses. She's aware that he was the test subject for the chips and asks him to leave quickly. However, Cindy secretly listens to their conversation while pretending to be asleep. Meanwhile, the men from before report to Faye about the wanted man being with a crippled girl. Faye hears water flowing near the wall and realizes that there is someone living in this abandoned warehouse. On the other side, Cindy is having a talk with her grandma. A huge bang, and the front door gets destroyed. Faye comes with his subordinate and asks about the wanted man. They even threaten Granny. Faye sees Cindy and gets that familiar feeling. He's pretty much sure that it's the same girl from 10 years ago. So apparently, Chung has brainwashed him saying that Han and Cindy abandoned him that day. He tries to check her birthmark on her neck but doesn't find it. I guess Granny must have hid it using some tricks. Suddenly, they hear the ruckus outside and it turns out to be the same wanted guy. They have an intense fight, and in the end, Faye takes down the guy. Meanwhile, Cindy and others try to run away, but Grandma forgets something important and goes back to retrieve it. She takes out a small box and asks her brother to leave with her. However, he insists on staying and stalling for time. Faye and his subordinate return to clean up the eyewitnesses. Grandpa is no more. The rest of the group somehow manage to escape the place. They go to their uncle's house to hide for the time being. Now the question is, what is inside that box? Grandpa even sacrificed himself for the box. The next day, Cindy remembers the tattoo she saw on the wanted guy's neck and Faye's neck. She sneaks out of the house and goes to her uncle's workplace to ask him about it. However, he doesn't say much and asks her to go home quickly. She's literally a wanted girl now, as Faye has issued a heavy search for her. She doesn't get any answers, so her only option is now to go to the place where all the corpses are burnt. She manages to find the wanted guy's body, but she gets interrupted by Faye's man. He takes her to the burner room to teach her a lesson for the last time. He turns up the heat and the temperature starts increasing. Suddenly, the chip inside her activates and the boiler door gets destroyed, knocking out the man. Meanwhile, her grandma is worried about her. Cindy somehow reaches home and faints in front of her grandma. After waking up, she apologizes to her grandma for sneaking out. However, Granny is now fixated on leaving the city. She already knows that Cindy is investigating her mom's death and she doesn't want to lose her now. After thinking for a while, Cindy agrees to leave the city next week with her grandma. Meanwhile, Faye sees the burner room condition and deduces that it's the same Cindy that he was searching for. He immediately informs Chung of this finding. They start searching the whole city for Cindy. On the other hand, Cindy does some research on the wanted man and learns that he was the FTB fighter. I mean, those WWE types of things. That night, she again sneaks out to go to see the fighter's family. However, she doesn't find any clue, except for his winning fighting championship picture. The next day, while having breakfast, she informs her that he's taking part in the FTB match to earn some extra cash. I mean, this will help them to survive for a time being outside of the city. Cindy strictly says no and makes him promise that he will never step foot in those fighting matches. Oh, and did I tell you that Faye is actually the owner of FTB? He manages all the matches and takes care of this business. That night, Cindy gets ready to go to the FTB ground to continue her investigation. She even cuts her hair so that people should not easily recognize her. I mean, but what about the wheelchair? Anyway, she reaches the fighting location and sees she fighting. This initially shocks her and she goes near the ring to stop him. Faye notices her near the ring and quickly runs towards her. However, she manages to hide from him. He fires a gun and evacuates everyone from the place. Faye then takes Shi as hostage and asks Cindy to come out of hiding. She doesn't have any option left but to show herself. He then kicks Shi and knocks him unconscious. This triggers something in Cindy and she bursts out with her powers. After an insane fight, her body starts to go back to her crippled state. Faye takes this chance and knocks her out. Later, she finds herself in the research facility, where they have attached some wires to her body. Basically, they are trying to encrypt the data on the second-gen chip and extract its information. Chung starts the process and it starts to hurt Cindy. Faye initially is unhinged, however, seeing her suffering, he starts to waver a little bit. He gets a flashback of the day when he met Cindy for the first time. She gave him the origami crane and also named him Faye. I mean, he was just a test subject before, but she gave him the name. So the initial programs which the scientist runs fails, so they decide to run a different encryption program. However, this might put Cindy's life in danger. Chung asks Faye to leave the room for a time being and starts the program. This puts a lot of burden on her. After a while, it completes extraction, but something weird happens. All the electronics shut down and Cindy wakes up with all of her fully awakened powers. So it's twist time. Cindy already knew about Chung and what he was going to do to her. She was secretly investigating everything about them. She even opened the box which Granny was protecting in the past, and she found her mother's research notes about the second-gen chip. Cindy tried to control her powers in the past, but the protective barrier put on the chip couldn't let her do it. So she intentionally got involved with Faye and the incidents so that they would bring her to the facility. Their program managed to destroy the protective barrier, and now she's in full control of the chip. Well, that was pretty smart, I would say. She takes down all the guards, and even Faye's subordinate can't match against the second-gen chip. It now comes down to Faye. After an intense and breathtaking fight, Cindy comes as a victor. I mean, it was a piece of cake for her. She then goes to confront Chung, who's literally scared to his life. She attacks him, but Chung tries to stall some time, saying her mom is still alive. He then takes her to a secret room where her mother's brain is preserved. This angers Cindy, and her powers take another form. She takes down Chung, and let's keep this part for the Patreon. I personally do not like much gore. She then goes outside and Faye asks her to kill him before going. I mean, he doesn't have anything left to live for now. Suddenly, the crane falls from his jacket and she comes to her senses. She realizes he's the Faye from her past. I mean, she used to think that he's dead, but it was a shock for her to see him alive. She lets him go and tells him to be free and live. The end. Now, I know it was a pretty short movie, but I personally liked it. It has that feel of the show called Stranger Things. Do let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and we will see you in the next video.